is the Bible actually accurate and from God and authoritative or not? And that is a question that maybe you've wrestled with, or maybe someone you're trying to lead to the faith or persuade to stay in the faith is wrestling with. And how do we respond to that? Well, that's what we're going to discuss in this video. Now, this video is a part of a larger series on our channel, Bethel Pittsburgh. Under playlist, you'll find a playlist titled The Disciple, and on there are a list of videos that are in category order. And you will find, it'll say the name, it will say the disciple, it'll say the category, and then the title or the specifics about that particular video. This video is under the category of apologetics. If you're in the playlist, you will see that there are some videos above this one regarding apologetics that would be good to catch up on before you land here. But you could be in this one as well. So how do we know that the New Testament is actually reporting the truth to us, and how do we know that it came from who it claims to come from? And the way we're going to know that is through an understanding of how we handle ancient documents. And as we wrestle with that, because the difference between the Christian faith, and we might say, well, who cares if we know that the Apostle Paul wrote it? It doesn't mean it's from God, and it doesn't mean that it's authoritative in our lives. And those are all true unless. So a lot of other religious books and even secular books from antiquity are philosophy. They're written by people who are saying they're trying to wrestle through with what they believe is the right way to see the world. And that's a different thing than writings that are claiming that certain historical events took place that are supernatural and demonstrate that those who are involved in the reporting and writing of them and the teaching of what's in there is coming from God. Those are two different types of categories. I hope you can see the difference there. Then it's not that the Bible's the only one that makes those claims. There are other works of antiquity that claim supernatural, but it doesn't mean supernatural and therefore from God. But if ours is coming from a reliable source, then it carries a lot more weight. Because again, you got philosophical works, doesn't have the same thing. You have works that make claims of historical events but are not accurate, not the same. You have a book that claims his miraculous events within history documented, and then a claim for what God is saying, a lot different than those other two. Now, how are we going to know that? So the way we evaluate, actually, and another thing is sometimes people want to say, they want to reject certain sources because they're coming from Christian sources, especially ancient Christian sources. And the problem with that is, who's going to record most of the stuff happening within the Christian faith? It's going to be Christians. Those outsiders are not going to care enough about what's happening within the Christian community to record it. Now, there are some recordings, there are some secular recordings. That's why we've said in a previous video that most historians will accept that a figure named Jesus did exist in the first century and was crucified. So, and there were certain claims about him. Most historians will accept that because there is evidence outside of Scripture that took place. But most of the details you're going to find within the Christian community. So think of it this way. In American history, most of American history is going to be written by Americans. It's not that there's not going to be sources from outside of the United States, but most American history is going to be written by Americans because we're the closest to it. We're the ones that care enough, and we're the ones that are going to be recording that information. Now, we are only 250 years old as a nation, and we only go about 500 or so years back as far as European colonists in this land of North America. We're talking about 2,000 years of a civilization back in the first century. So information didn't spread and wasn't kept and maintained as much as it has been in these last few centuries. So there's going to be a lot more information from outside the United States than there would be from outside of the Christian faith. But it's still going to be disproportionate. A lot more is going to be within the American community, and there's going to be a lot more information from the American community than from the ancient Christian community. But the point is, there is information, some, small as it is, from secular sources in the first century or so, and there's a lot more information in the Christian community. So we won't reject certain things as not real in American history just because it was not recorded by non-Americans. Same should be true with the Christian faith. We shouldn't just reject that certain things were taught and happened because we only know about those things from the Christian community, especially since there's some validation of some of the things outside of the Christian community. And so we have documents from the Christian community. These are documents that have been kept within the Bible, called the New Testament, Matthew through Revelation. And if I'm going to try to determine, are these actually coming from the first century like they claim that they are they actually coming from the people who are claiming to write them? And if you were to look at ancient documents, the way people will test ancient documents for their authenticity is going to be two things. How close in here's another thing to consider. The way they recorded information is they would make handwritten copies. And at some point, they would no longer have the original written copy, but they would have written copies. So just because I saved something on my computer and then emailed it, and then it got downloaded and saved on another computer, so that's now a manuscript document. It's no longer the original document that I typed on, but it doesn't mean that it's not accurate. And that's the same kind of dynamic with manuscripts, is that they were writing handwritten copies, and then they were going out, and eventually you'd lose or destroy because they were just getting aged, the original documents, and then you would just have copies. And so you can test and try to figure out, there's ways they can figure out approximate age of the material that the manuscript is written on, or when it was discovered, those kind of things, to be able to determine the date of the document, not the date necessarily of the writing that's on the document. And so the closer the manuscript, the copy that we have, the material, from the time it's claiming it is being written, is going to be what makes it more acceptable as a legitimate document. And the manuscripts that we have are 100 or so years. I'm going to leave a link in the description that will give you a lot more of that information. But a short period of time, as far as antiquity is concerned, from the manuscripts, copies that we have, to the original time that they were being written. And there are a lot of other historical ancient documents that are accepted as written from an individual and accurate, though they are 3-4 times the distance, the manuscript that we have, to the time it was being claimed to be written. It doesn't mean they're not accurate. It just means the New Testament has a lot more accuracy when it comes to that part of the test. The second part of the test is, how many manuscripts do we have? How many copies do we have? Because the more copies you have, the more you can compare to see if there's discrepancies from the manuscripts, and the things that there's no discrepancies with, those are the things you know are more likely to be what was originally said. The ancient documents, I don't even know, I think, and again, you can check out that link, I think the closest one is a document that has somewhere between 100 and 200. It might even be under 100, but I think it might be between 100 and 200 manuscripts of this ancient document. The New Testament has thousands of manuscript copies of the New Testament. And the percentage of some of these ancient documents, the best might be 80-something%. Again, check me on the numbers. It's in that link, 80-something%. But the New Testament, high 90s accuracy as far as the same thing being said across manuscripts. And so we have an incredibly reliable, ancient, documented source of what happened in the first century with Jesus and with the apostles. So I encourage you to think that through and allow that information to be something that you can use to make sure that you defend your own faith, and maintain that, as well as help others to do the same or to come into the faith. If you have any questions on that, leave that in the comments below. I'd be glad to respond to them. Or if you have any feedback on the usefulness of this content, I'd love to hear from you. If you would like to join us in your growth in your faith in person and you live in the Pittsburgh area, we would love for you to join us at Bethel Assembly of God, 2501 State Street, Wednesday nights at 6:30 and Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. God bless.